The emergency alarm echoed through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council building. Captain Jake Murphy looked up from his coffee as the sound pierced the quiet morning. He had heard this alarm only twice before in his 5 years as Earth's military representative. Both times had been for natural disasters that wiped out entire colonies. Ambassador Lisa Coleman burst through the door of their shared office. Her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly as she grabbed her formal jacket from the wall hook. "Jake, we need to get to the council chamber now. Something big is happening." Murphy stood and straightened his uniform. "How big are we talking? About? The kind of big that makes species go extinct." They hurried through the floating corridors of the massive structure. Other representatives from dozens of worlds moved in the same direction. Murphy noticed the fear in their alien faces. The Vorthans, usually proud and loud, walked in silence. The Etherians, who normally floated with grace, seemed to drift like lost spirits. Dr. Ben Carter joined them at the main entrance to the chamber. The xenobiologist carried a datapad and wore the worried expression Murphy had learned meant very bad news. "What do we know, Ben?" Coleman asked. 3 star systems have gone completely dark in the past month. No communications, no life signs, nothing. The last transmission from each system was the same message: a plea for help. The chamber was the largest room Murphy had ever seen. It could hold representatives from over 300 worlds, though only about half that number belonged to the council. Today, every seat was filled. The air hummed with translated conversations in dozens of languages. At the center of the chamber, Council Leader Zixathara floated above a holographic display. The ancient being's normally bright aura had dimmed to a sickly yellow. Around the display, military commanders from the major powers stood in a circle, their faces grim. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Zixathara's voice filled the chamber without amplification. "We face a threat unlike any in recorded history, please observe." The hologram showed a star map of the local spiral arm. 3 red zones blinked ominously where thriving systems had once been marked in blue. The Rigel colonies, home to 4 billion souls, fell first. The Tau Centauri settlements followed. Then the industrial worlds of the Kepler chain. In each case, the pattern was identical. The display zoomed in on the Rigel system. Murphy watched as the recording showed normal space traffic one day, then nothing but empty void the next. No debris, no heat signatures, no signs that billions of people had ever lived there. The enemy calls itself the Shadow Maw Collective. They consume everything, not just resources or territory, but the very essence of life itself. Every living being becomes part of their consciousness. General Kevtar of the Vorthan Empire stepped forward. Murphy had met the warrior before and respected his direct manner. Today, even Kevtar looked shaken. "Our fleets engaged the Shadow Maw at Tau Centauri. We lost 47 ships without destroying a single enemy vessel. Worse, our captured crews were turned against us within hours." Murmurs of fear rippled through the chamber. Murphy leaned over to Carter. "How is that possible? From what I can gather, they absorb minds into their collective consciousness. Individual identity disappears, but memories and skills remain. They gain everything we know about ourselves." Zixathara continued the briefing. "The Shadow Maw fleet grows stronger with every victory. Our intelligence suggests they are already moving toward the core worlds. Conservative estimates give us 6 months before they reach the major population centers." "What about the Etherian defense grid?" called out a representative from the outer systems. "Your barriers have held for 1,000 years. The barriers work against conventional weapons and known forms of attack. The Shadow Maw simply ignore them. They phase through solid matter at will and corrupt energy fields on contact." The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Murphy watched species that had never known real war struggle to understand the concept of an unstoppable enemy. These civilizations had grown up in peace, their greatest conflicts settled by diplomacy and trade agreements. "Order. We must have order." Zixathara's aura flared brighter. "I call for proposals. All member species will contribute what they can to the defense effort." For the next hour, Murphy listened to suggestions that ranged from desperate to ridiculous. The Altarians offered to share their quantum computing technology. The Centauri Collective promised their entire merchant fleet for evacuations. The Crystal Singers volunteered to attempt communication with the Shadow Maw consciousness. None of it would work, Murphy realized. These were solutions from species that solved problems through cooperation and understanding. They could not grasp, facing an enemy that wanted to erase their very existence. What about military options? Murphy found himself speaking before he realized it. The chamber fell silent, and hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the human section. General Kevtar shook his massive head. Human Murphy, with respect, we have tried military solutions. The Vorthan Armada was the strongest fighting force in the galaxy. The Shadow Maw destroyed us in hours. But you fought them using your own tactics, Murphy pressed. What if we tried something different? Different how? Zixthera asked. Murphy felt Coleman's warning hand on his arm, but he continued. The Shadow Maw expect resistance based on honor, logic, and conventional warfare. What if they faced an enemy that fought by completely different rules? You speak of your own species, Zixthera observed. Humans have been part of the Council for 30 years, but you remain largely untested in large conflicts. The dismissal was polite but clear. Murphy had heard it many times before. Humans were newcomers, primitives from a backwater world, who had barely achieved interstellar travel. They were tolerated members of the galactic community, nothing more. Maybe being untested is an advantage, Murphy said quietly. Maybe the Shadow Maw have never faced a species that learned to fight on a death world. The term caused another stir. Most Council species came from peaceful garden worlds where the greatest natural threat was an occasional storm. The concept of a planet actively trying to kill its inhabitants was foreign to them. Zixthera's aura shifted to a curious blue. Captain Murphy, are you suggesting that Earth's harsh conditions have prepared your species for this type of warfare? Before Murphy could answer, his communication device chimed with an incoming message from Earth Command. He glanced at the text and felt his heart rate spike. Council Leader, I request permission to contact my government immediately. Granted, but please share any relevant information with the Assembly. Murphy activated his communicator on Open Channel. Earth Command, this is Captain Murphy at Kepler Prime. We have received your message. Can you confirm your response to the Council's situation? The reply came through clearly, broadcast to every being in the chamber. Admiral Hayes's voice was calm and matter-of-fact. Captain Murphy, tell the Galactic Council that Earth has analyzed the Shadow Maw threat. We are mobilizing the home defense fleet and all available resources. Our ships will begin departure in 72 hours. Estimated arrival at your position is 18 days. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Zixthera floated higher, aura blazing with surprise. Captain Murphy, did your admiral say the home defense fleet? How many ships does Earth commit to this defense? Murphy checked his datapad, reading the deployment orders that were still coming through. The numbers made him blink twice to make sure he was reading correctly. Council Leader, Earth is committing 437 combat vessels, plus support ships. Total force projection includes ground assault capabilities for hostile environment operations. The silence that followed was complete. Even the translation system seemed to pause in shock. Earth, the minor member species that most barely remembered, existed, was fielding a fleet larger than some entire star nations could manage. General Kevtar spoke first. Captain Murphy, forgive my directness, but Earth has always been described as having limited military capabilities. How do you possess such a fleet? Murphy looked around the chamber at faces filled with confusion and growing hope. These peaceful species were about to learn something about death worlds that no one had ever explained to them. General, Earth doesn't just have a military. Earth is a military. Every human alive has spent their entire evolution learning to fight, survive, and kill things that were trying to eat them. We've just never had a proper enemy before now. The last transmission from Earth Command crackled through the speakers. Murphy, one more thing. Tell the Council we're bringing friends. The colonies are mobilizing too. It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten a death world's adopted family. 18 days later, Captain Jake Murphy stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council station. He had been watching the edge of the system for 3 hours, waiting for the first signs of the Earth fleet. Ambassador Lisa Coleman joined, him with 2 cups of coffee, a human drink that had become surprisingly popular among some alien species. "Any word from the advanced scouts?" she asked, handing him the warm cup. "Nothing yet. But they'll be here. Earth Command has never missed a deadline." Dr. Ben Carter rushed onto the observation deck, his datapad clutched tightly in his hands. His face showed the same excitement Murphy had seen when Carter discovered a new species. "Jake, Lisa, you need to see this. The long-range sensors just picked up something at the system edge." They followed Carter to the sensor station. The technician, a tall, blue-skinned Altarian, looked confused as she pointed at her displays. "Captain Murphy, these readings cannot be correct. The sensors show a massive energy signature approaching, but the size estimates are impossible." Murphy looked at the display. The numbers made his eyebrows rise. "How massive are we talking about?" "If these readings are accurate, your fleet contains over 600 vessels. The largest is nearly 3 kilometers long." Coleman choked on her coffee. 3 kilometers? Jake, what exactly did Earth send us?" Before Murphy could answer, Admiral Rick Hayes' voice came through the communication system. "Kepler Prime Control, this is Admiral Hayes aboard the UES Defiance, requesting permission to dock and address the Galactic Council." The Altarian technician stared at her instruments. "Admiral Hayes, please confirm your fleet size. Our sensors indicate massive energy signatures." "Confirmed, Control. We brought 437 primary combat vessels, plus support, ships, supply vessels, and medical facilities. Total fleet size is 892 ships." The observation deck fell silent. Through the massive windows, the first human ships began to appear. Murphy had served on Earth vessels before, but seeing them arrive as a fleet took his breath away. The ships were dark gray and angular, covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. They moved in perfect formation, each vessel maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. "My God," Coleman whispered. "We really are a military species, aren't we?" The lead ship, the UES Defiance, was indeed 3 kilometers of armored metal and advanced weapon systems. As it approached the station, smaller ships spread out around it in a protective formation. Murphy counted missile tubes, particle beam projectors, and weapon systems he did not recognize. Dr. Carter was furiously taking notes on his datapad. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. How long has Earth been building ships like this?" "Since we joined the Council 30 years ago. Every shipyard on Earth and in the colonies has been working on the defense fleet. We always knew that eventually something like this would happen." "Something like what?" Murphy looked at his friends, realizing they still did not understand what Earth really was. "Ben, Lisa, you've lived on peaceful worlds your whole lives. You think of war as something that happens occasionally between civilized species. For humans, war is Tuesday. We've been preparing for the day someone threatened our new family." The docking process took several hours. The human ships were too large for the station's normal docking bays, so they anchored nearby and sent shuttles. Admiral Hayes arrived with a small group of officers, each wearing the dark blue uniform of Earth Command. Hayes was exactly what Murphy expected from Earth's top military commander. Tall, gray-haired, and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who had seen real combat. Behind him walked Colonel Amy Torres, a compact woman with scars on her hands that spoke of experience with dangerous situations. The council chamber had been prepared for another emergency session. This time, the atmosphere was different. Instead of panic, Murphy sensed curiosity and hope. The arrival of the human fleet had given the galaxy something it had not felt since the Shadow Maw threat began: the possibility of victory. Admiral Hayes stood at the center of the chamber, looking around at the assembled representatives with calm eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone used to making life-and-death decisions. "Members of the Galactic Council, I am Admiral Rick Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. I understand you face an enemy that threatens all life in this region of space. Earth is prepared to help." Council leader Zixathera floated forward, aura bright with interest. "Admiral Hayes, we are grateful for your response. However, we must be honest about the situation. The Shadow Maw Collective has defeated every military force we have sent against them. What makes you believe human tactics will succeed where others have failed? Hayes turned to Colonel Torres, who activated a holographic projector. The display showed Earth from space, a blue and white sphere that looked peaceful from a distance. Council leader, I believe there has been a misunderstanding about Earth's nature. Your records classify our homeworld as habitable, but they miss an important detail. Earth is what we call a Class 12 death world. The term sent whispers through the chamber. Murphy had never heard most species even mention death worlds, let alone classify them by degrees of danger. Dr. Sam Phillips, Hayes's science officer, stepped forward. Council members, perhaps we should explain what that means. On Earth, 96% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. The planet actively tries to kill everything on it through extreme weather, geological instability, predatory life forms, and gravity nearly twice that of most inhabited worlds. The hologram changed to show images from Earth's history: massive storms that could flatten cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that changed global climate, predators with teeth longer than most species' entire bodies. Humans did not just survive on Earth, Phillips continued. We became the planet's dominant predator. We learned to hunt animals 10 times our size, to survive in environments that would kill most galactic species instantly, and to fight wars that lasted centuries. Colonel Torres activated another display, this one showing human military history. Ancient battles where humans fought with primitive weapons. Modern conflicts where entire cities were destroyed. Space battles where human crews continued fighting even when their ships were being torn apart. Every human alive has inherited the survival instincts of a species that spent millions of years learning to kill or be killed. We have never lived in peace because our planet would not let us. When we joined the galactic community, we did not stop being predators. We just found something worth protecting. General Kevtar leaned forward, his warrior instincts clearly engaged. Admiral Hayes, this is fascinating, but how does it help against the Shadow Maw? They absorb consciousness itself. They turn our own people against us. Hayes smiled, and Murphy felt a chill run down his spine. It was the smile of a predator who had found worthy prey. General, the Shadow Maw Collective makes one critical mistake. They assume all species think the same way. They absorb peaceful minds from peaceful worlds and use that knowledge to predict behavior. They have never encountered a species that views total warfare as a natural state. Commander Pete Jackson, Hayes's fleet coordinator, activated a tactical display. The Shadow Maw use psychological warfare as their primary weapon. They break their enemy's will to fight by corrupting their values and turning their strengths into weaknesses. This works against species that value honor, logic, and preservation of life above all else. Humans value different things, Torres added. We value survival of our tribe, completion of the mission, and victory at any cost. We have cultural concepts the Shadow Maw cannot understand or exploit. We call them things like acceptable losses, scorched earth tactics, and mutually assured destruction. The chamber was completely silent now. Murphy realized that his peaceful alien friends were beginning to understand what Earth really was. They were learning that the primitive species they had tolerated for 30 years was actually a planet full of apex predators who had been waiting for a real enemy. Dr. Phillips brought up biological scans of human physiology. Council members' human bodies are adapted for extreme stress. We produce adrenaline that increases strength and speed during combat. Our brains can shut down emotional responses and focus entirely on destruction when necessary. We can function on minimal sleep, survive severe injuries, and continue fighting when most species would surrender or die. Most importantly, Hayes said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, humans do not break under psychological pressure. When faced with impossible odds, we do not surrender. We get angry. When our enemies threaten our families, we do not negotiate. We eliminate the threat completely. Zixathera's aura had shifted to a deep purple that Murphy had never seen before. Admiral Hayes, you are describing your species as if they are living weapons. Council leader, that is exactly what we are. Earth spent millions of years forging us into the perfect survival machine. We were the monster that all the other monsters on our world were afraid of. Now something is threatening our adopted galactic family, and that makes us very, very angry. Hayes gestured to the tactical display, which now showed human fleet positions throughout the local systems. The Shadow Maw Collective is about to learn why Deathworlds are quarantined. Lieutenant Dan Morgan checked his rifle one final time as the UES Wolverine approached the dead system of Tau Centauri Beta. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Hayes received permission to hunt the Shadow Maw Collective. Now it was time to see what humanity was really facing. Captain Alex Rivera stood beside him on the bridge, watching the tactical displays with the calm focus that made her one of Earth's best reconnaissance commanders. The Wolverine was built for this kind of mission. Fast, quiet, and armed with weapons designed to get her crew out of impossible situations. "Sensor sweep complete, Captain," reported the navigation officer. "No active Shadow Maw vessels detected, but we're reading massive biosignatures from the former colony worlds." Rivera nodded. "Take us in slowly. Morgan, get your team ready. If there are survivors down there, we need to know what we're dealing with." Morgan gathered his squad in the armory. Sergeant Kate Walsh was checking her sidearm, her face showing the focused expression she always wore before a mission. The rest of the team consisted of 6 Marines, each selected for their experience in hostile environments. Dr. Nina Clark, the mission psychologist, joined them as they suited up. She carried a medical scanner and a datapad filled with research about hive mind entities. "Remember," Clark said, "everything we know about the Shadow Maw comes from long-range observations and survivor reports. We have no idea how they actually interact with individual minds. Stay alert for any mental influences." Walsh snorted as she sealed her helmet. "Doc, we're from Earth. Our minds are already twisted enough that alien influence probably won't make much difference." The joke got a few laughs from the squad, but Morgan noticed everyone was checking their weapons more carefully than usual. Going up against an enemy that could turn your own thoughts against you was different from fighting normal opponents. The Wolverine's shuttle bay opened, and Morgan's team launched toward the surface of New Sparta, the largest world in the Tau Centauri system. From orbit, the planet looked wrong. The cities were still there, but they pulsed with an organic red light that made Morgan's skin crawl. "Wolverine to ground team," Rivera's voice came through their communicators. "We're detecting a large Vorthon battlecruiser in orbit around the 4th planet. It's not responding to hails, but it's showing power signatures." Morgan looked up through the shuttle's window. In the distance, he could see the massive shape of a Vorthon warship. It drifted without purpose, its hull covered in the same red organic material that covered the planet's cities. "Copy that, Wolverine. We'll investigate the surface first, then move to the battlecruiser if needed." The shuttle touched down in what had been New Sparta's main plaza. The buildings around them were intact but changed. Walls that had once been clean metal and glass now pulsed with veins of red biological matter. The streets were covered in a carpet of the same material that moved slowly like breathing skin. "Jesus," whispered one of the Marines. "It's like the whole city is alive." "Stay focused," Morgan ordered. "Walsh, take point. Everyone else, standard formation. Clark, start scanning for life signs." They moved through the eerily quiet streets. The organic material under their feet felt soft and warm, even through their armored boots. Every building they passed showed signs of the same biological infection. What had once been a thriving Vorthon colony was now something else entirely. Clark's scanner started beeping frantically. "Lieutenant, I'm reading massive biosignatures ahead. Multiple life forms, but the patterns are strange. It's like they're all connected somehow." They rounded a corner and found them. A group of Vorthons stood in the middle of what had been a market square. At first glance, they looked normal, but something was terribly wrong. They moved in perfect synchronization, turning their heads at exactly the same time to stare at the human team. "By all the gods of war," Walsh muttered. "Look at their eyes." The Vorthon's eyes were completely black, filled with the same red veins that covered the city. When they opened their mouths to speak, their voices came out in perfect unison. "Welcome, Death Spawn. We have been waiting for you." Morgan raised his rifle but held his fire. "I am Lieutenant Morgan of the Earth Defense Force. Are you citizens of New Sparta? We were citizens once. Now we are part of something greater. We are Shadow Maw. We are eternal. We are perfect. The infected Vorthons began walking toward them, with the same synchronized movements. Morgan noticed that they showed no fear of the humans' weapons, no concern for their own safety. "Lieutenant," Clark whispered urgently, "my readings show their brain patterns are completely different from normal Vorthon psychology. It's like they're sharing a single consciousness." "We know what you are thinking, human minds," the Vorthans continued. "You believe you can resist us. You believe your Deathworld nature makes you strong. But we have absorbed the memories of brave Vorthon warriors. We know all the ways that courage can be turned to despair." One of the infected Vorthons stepped forward. Morgan recognized the uniform of a military officer, though it was now fused with organic material. "I was Commander Zark of the Vorthon Defense Corps. I died fighting for honor and glory. But death is not the end when the Shadow Maw embrace you. My skills, my memories, my tactical knowledge all serve the collective now." Dr. Clark was studying her scanner readings with growing excitement rather than fear. "Lieutenant, this is incredible. They're trying to use psychological warfare, but it's not working the way they expect." "What do you mean?" "They're using standard intimidation tactics that would work on most species. But look at your team's stress readings. Everyone's adrenaline is up, but not from fear. You're all getting excited for a fight." Morgan realized Clark was right. The sight of the infected Vorthons did not fill him with horror or despair. Instead, he felt the familiar rush of combat preparation that every human knew from childhood. His team was not backing down. They were getting ready to attack. "We will show you images from the minds we have consumed," the Vorthons said. "You will see the final moments of brave warriors who thought they could resist us." Suddenly, Morgan's helmet display filled with visions of Vorthon soldiers being overwhelmed by Shadow Maw forces. He saw proud warriors breaking down as their comrades were turned against them. He watched as entire fleets surrendered rather than fight their own converted crews. But instead of feeling despair, Morgan felt anger. These were good soldiers who had been murdered and perverted by an enemy that fought without honor. The visions that were supposed to break his will only made him more determined to destroy the creatures responsible. "Sergeant Walsh," Morgan said, calmly, "how do you feel about what we just saw?" "Pissed off, sir. These things killed good soldiers and are wearing their faces. Permission to open fire? Granted. Light them up." The human weapons opened up with a sound like thunder. The infected Vorthons had expected the humans to hesitate, to be horrified by the prospect of shooting former allies. Instead, they faced soldiers who saw only targets that needed to be eliminated. The creatures tried to adapt, using Vorthon combat tactics to fight back, but their shared consciousness worked against them. When one was hit, they all felt the pain. When one fell, the others stumbled in sympathy. "This is impossible," the remaining Vorthons said, their perfect unison breaking for the first time. "You should be broken by now. You should surrender rather than harm innocent victims." Morgan reloaded his weapon and looked at the creatures with cold eyes. "You made one mistake. These aren't innocent victims anymore. You killed them and are using their bodies. That makes you the enemy, and humans don't negotiate with enemies who threaten our people." The fight was over in minutes. The infected Vorthons had expected to face an enemy that would be paralyzed by moral concerns and psychological manipulation. Instead, they encountered soldiers who viewed the situation as a simple tactical problem that required a violent solution. "Doctor." Clark was taking readings from the fallen creatures when her scanner detected something new. "Lieutenant, I'm picking up a massive biosignature from the Vorthon battlecruiser. Whatever's on that ship is much larger than these ground forces." Morgan looked up at the sky where the infected warship waited in orbit. "Wolverine, this is ground. Team, we've cleared the surface contacts, but we need to investigate that battlecruiser. Can you get us up there?" Captain Rivera's response was immediate. "Copy that, ground team. We'll dock with the battlecruiser and give you access. Be advised, our sensors show the entire ship is crawling with biosignatures." As they prepared to leave the infected planet, Morgan realized something important had happened during the fight. The Shadow Maw had tried their primary weapon against humans and it had failed completely. Their psychological attacks had not broken human morale. Instead, they had made the situation worse for themselves by giving humans a clearer picture of exactly what needed to be destroyed. 20 minutes later, the Wolverine's docking tube connected to the Vorthon battlecruiser. The airlock opened, with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, and immediately Morgan could smell something wrong. The air was thick and humid, filled with an organic scent that reminded him of rotting vegetation. The corridors of the battlecruiser were completely transformed. What had once been clean military passages were now tunnels of pulsing biological matter. General Frank Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching 3 star systems burn at once. It had been 6 weeks since Lieutenant Morgan's first contact with the Shadow Maw Collective, and now humanity was showing the galaxy what real war looked like. "Status report," Stone ordered, his eyes never leaving the tactical display that showed human fleets engaged across multiple fronts. Major Tom Anderson stepped forward with his datapad. "Sir, Operation Clean Sweep is proceeding, ahead of schedule. Admiral Hayes reports the Rigel system will be cleared within 48 hours. Colonel Torres has successfully established beachheads on all 3 Shadow Maw hive worlds in the Kepler chain." Stone nodded grimly. The plan was simple in concept but brutal in execution. Instead of defending against Shadow Maw attacks, humanity had chosen to simultaneously assault every known Shadow Maw position. The enemy had never faced an opponent willing to fight on so many fronts at once. "What about casualties?" "Heavy, sir, but within acceptable parameters. The crews are holding together better than projected. Seems like fighting an enemy this nasty actually improves morale." Dr. Paul Johnson approached from the science station, carrying a sample container that glowed with sickly red light. "General, we've made a breakthrough in understanding Shadow Maw biology. The good news is we can hurt them. The bad news is they adapt to our weapons faster than any enemy we've ever faced. Show me." Johnson activated a holographic display that showed the cellular structure of Shadow Maw organisms. Their tissue can restructure itself at the molecular level. Conventional weapons work for a few hours, then become useless as they develop immunity. But we found a weakness. The display zoomed in on neural pathways within the alien tissue. The collective consciousness requires constant communication between all parts of the organism. Disrupt that communication, and the individual components lose coordination. Stone studied the data with the focused attention he gave to all tactical intelligence. "What kind of disruption?" "Psychological chaos, sir. The Shadow Maw consciousness expects logical, predictable responses. When they encounter something completely outside their experience, it causes system-wide confusion." Captain Rose Mitchell's voice crackled over the communication system from her position leading the assault on Kepler 7. "General Stone, this is Demon Squad. We've breached the primary hive structure, but you need to see what we found down here." Stone activated the video link. The image that appeared made several bridge officers step back in shock. Mitchell and her squad were standing in a vast chamber filled with thousands of cocoons, each containing a partially absorbed alien being. The victims were still alive, their faces twisted in expressions of permanent terror. "Jesus, Rose, how many?" "We estimate over 50,000 beings from a dozen different species. They're being kept alive while the Shadow Maw slowly drains their consciousness. It's like a processing plant for souls." Stone felt the familiar cold anger that had made him Earth's most effective ground commander. "Can they be saved?" "Not in any meaningful way, sir. The neural pathways have been too damaged, but they're aware enough to know what's happening to them." The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. The Shadow Maw were not just conquering and killing. They were torturing entire populations on an industrial scale. Mitchell knew orders. Burn it all. Every cocoon, every structure, every trace of Shadow Maw presence. Show them what happens when they mess with our galaxy. "Copy that, sir." Demon Squad out. Stone turned to address his bridge crew, noting the mixture of determination and rage on their faces. "People, I want you to understand something. What Captain Mitchell just showed us is happening on dozens of worlds. The Shadow Maw have been doing this for centuries, and nobody has ever made them pay for it. He gestured to the tactical display showing human fleets engaged across multiple systems. Today, that changes. Today, they learn what it means to face a species that considers total war to be a normal Tuesday. Admiral Hayes's voice came through the fleet communication system. All units, this is Admiral Hayes. The Shadow Maw are attempting to retreat from the Rigel system. Do not let them escape. I repeat, do not let them escape. Every enemy ship that gets away will be used to torture more innocent people. Stone watched as the tactical display showed human ships pursuing fleeing Shadow Maw vessels with relentless efficiency. The enemy was learning that humans did not take prisoners when facing an opponent that committed atrocities. Commander Pete Jackson reported from the Fleet Coordination Center. Sir, we're receiving surrender offers from Shadow Maw forces in 3 systems. They're promising to release their captives in exchange for safe passage. Response? Admiral Hayes told them to go to hell. We don't negotiate with species that torture children. The communication board lit up with reports from across the battle zone. Every human commander was reporting the same thing. The Shadow Maw were trying to use their usual psychological tactics, but they were having no effect on human forces. General Stone called out the intelligence officer. We're intercepting Shadow Maw communications. They're calling us the insane ones and requesting reinforcements from their core worlds. Stone smiled grimly. Let them call us insane. Fear is just another word for respect when it comes from your enemies. Dr. Johnson approached with new data. Sir, our psychological warfare division has developed something interesting. We've been broadcasting human music and cultural recordings toward Shadow Maw positions. Music? Death metal, war songs, and recordings of human crowd noise from sporting events. The collective consciousness can't process the chaotic emotional content. It's causing system-wide panic in their neural networks. Stone raised an eyebrow. You're telling me we're winning a war by playing loud music? Among other things, yes, sir. Apparently, a species that evolved in perfect harmony cannot handle the concept of controlled chaos that humans call entertainment. Captain Mitchell's voice came back over the communicator. General, Demon Squad has cleared the primary hive on Kepler 7. We found something else you need to know about. There's a Shadow Maw creature here that's different from the others. It's trying to communicate. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Stone had heard before. It sounded like 1,000 voices speaking at once, but underneath was something that might have been fear. Human Commander, I am a node prime of the Shadow Maw Collective. I request parley under the laws of galactic warfare. Stone looked around at his bridge crew, seeing the same cold anger in their eyes that he felt. There are no laws of galactic warfare when you're committing genocide, alien. You want to talk, you can talk to our weapons. You do not understand. We are eternal. We have consumed 1,000 civilizations. Your resistance will only delay the inevitable. Let me explain something to you, Stone replied. We're not just another civilization. We're from a death world where everything tried to kill us for millions of years. We learned to fight predators bigger, stronger, and meaner than us. You're just the latest thing that needs killing. Your species is insane. You fight without regard for preservation of life. You destroy rather than absorb. You are chaos incarnate. Now you're starting to understand. We are chaos incarnate and we really don't like bullies. The Shadow Maw voice took on a desperate tone. We can offer you knowledge beyond imagination, the secrets of 1,000 worlds, technology that could make your species gods among the stars. Stone's response was immediate. We don't want to be gods. We just want you to stop eating people. The transmission cut off abruptly. Moments later, Captain Mitchell reported massive explosions from deep within the hive structure. Looks like they chose suicide over surrender, sir. Good. Saves us the ammunition. Major Anderson approached with fleet-wide casualty reports. Sir, our losses are significant but sustainable. More importantly, we've completely disrupted Shadow Maw operations in this entire sector. They're pulling back to their core systems. Stone studied the strategic display, noting how the enemy's retreat patterns showed increasing desperation. Tom, what's your assessment? Are they regrouping for a counterattack or genuinely retreating? Based on intercepted communications, sir, I believe they're terrified. They've never faced an enemy that gets more aggressive when threatened. Every time they hurt us, we hit them twice as hard in response. Dr. Johnson joined the discussion. General, my analysis suggests the collective is experiencing something like a nervous breakdown. They're a hive mind optimized for absorbing peaceful species. Facing opponents who respond to absorption attempts with immediate violent retaliation is causing system-wide psychological trauma. Stone nodded, feeling a grim satisfaction. So we're not just winning battles, we're driving them insane. In layman's terms, yes, sir. The fleet communication system activated again, this time carrying Admiral Hayes's voice to all human forces. All units, this is Admiral Hayes. Intelligence reports indicate the Shadow Maw are consolidating all remaining forces at their home system. They're preparing for a final battle. Stone felt his pulse quicken. After weeks of systematic destruction, they were finally going to face the enemy's core strength. New orders coming down from Earth Command, Hayes continued. We are authorized to use any and all methods necessary to completely eliminate the Shadow Maw threat. Fleet Admiral Chris Burke stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance as the largest human fleet ever assembled, prepared to jump into the Shadow Maw home system. Around him, 800 ships held position in perfect formation, their crews ready for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Dr. Helen Price finished her final briefing on the Shadow Maw Prime Consciousness. Admiral, based on all our intelligence, the original entity is located in the core of their primary world. It's been alive for over 10,000 years, growing stronger with every mind it absorbs. Burke studied the tactical projections showing the enemy home system. 3 planets had been completely converted into biological processing centers, their surfaces crawling with Shadow Maw structures. At the center, the primary world pulsed with energy signatures unlike anything in known space. How many enemy ships are we looking at? Conservative estimates suggest over 2,000 vessels, sir, but these aren't just ships anymore. They're living extensions of the collective consciousness, capable of self-repair and adaptation. Captain Joe Davis, commander of the Assault Fleet's Advance Guard, joined the briefing. Sir, my pilots are ready for whatever's waiting in there. We've been practicing attack runs on biological targets for weeks, Burke nodded. In the months since the war began, human tactics had evolved specifically to counter Shadow Maw advantages. Their ships could adapt to conventional weapons, but they had never faced enemies who adapted even faster. Remember, people, this isn't just about winning a battle. Every mind the Shadow Maw have absorbed over 10,000 years is trapped in that collective consciousness. We're not just fighting for the future, we're fighting to free the past. Lieutenant Colonel Mary Scott stepped forward with her assault team roster. Admiral, ground team is ready for deployment. We've identified the probable location of the prime consciousness, but reaching it will require fighting through the most heavily defended target in Shadow Maw space. What's your assessment of success probability? Scott's smile was the expression of a soldier who had volunteered for a suicide mission and felt good about it. Sir, mathematically speaking, we're all going to die. Practically speaking, we're going to complete the mission first. Burke felt a surge of pride in his species. Only humans would volunteer for certain death with such enthusiasm. Mary, I want you to know that Earth Command considers this mission critical to the survival of galactic civilization. Understood. Sir, we'll get it done. The fleet jumped into hyperspace, emerging at the edge of the Shadow Maw home system 30 minutes later. What they found was beyond anything they had imagined. The entire system was alive. Planets pulsed with organic energy, connected by streams of biological matter that flowed through space like arteries. At the center, the primary world writhed, with tentacles larger than human cities. My God, whispered the navigation officer. It's like the whole system is one giant organism. The Shadow Maw response was immediate. Thousands of ships emerged from the organic structures, each one a unique fusion of technology and living tissue. They moved with perfect coordination, forming attack patterns that no individual pilot could have planned. All ships, this is Admiral Burke. Engage at will. Remember, we're not just fighting ships. We're fighting parts of a single mind that's been torturing innocent people for millennia. Make them pay for every life they've stolen. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. Human ships, dark and angular, clashed with Shadow Maw vessels that writhed and changed shape as they fought. The enemy's biological weapons tried to corrupt human technology, but Earth's engineers had learned to build systems that could resist such attacks. Captain Davis led his squadron in a direct assault on the largest Shadow Maw formation. Remember, people, these things expect us to fight like civilized beings. Let's disappoint them. His ships broke formation and attacked with the wild unpredictability that had made humans effective guerrilla fighters on Earth. Instead of maintaining safe distances, they closed to point-blank range and fired everything they had. When their weapons ran out, they rammed enemy vessels. The Shadow Maw collective consciousness had never encountered tactics like this. Their shared mind tried to predict human behavior, but humans kept doing things that made no logical sense. Ships with critical damage continued fighting. Crews with no hope of survival kept attacking. Pilots whose ships were destroyed ejected and tried to board enemy vessels with nothing but sidearms and explosives. "Admiral," reported the tactical officer, "the enemy is showing signs of system-wide confusion. Their coordination is breaking down." Dr. Price was monitoring the psychological warfare effects. "Sir, the collective consciousness is experiencing something like a panic attack. They can't understand why we're not retreating or surrendering." Burke smiled grimly. "That's because they've never fought a Deathworld species before. Helen, can you locate the prime consciousness from here?" "Yes, sir. It's definitely in the core of the primary planet, but the biological defenses around it are incredible. Nothing should be able to survive that environment." Define nothing. Temperatures over 200 degrees, toxic atmosphere, gravity 3 times Earth normal, and biological defenses that dissolve most known materials on contact. Burke activated his communicator. "Colonel Scott, did you hear that assessment?" Scott's voice came back cheerful and confident. "Yes, sir, sounds like a Tuesday on Earth. We're ready for insertion." The assault team launched from the Defiance in a specially modified shuttle designed to survive biological attacks. As they approached the primary world, the planet itself seemed to recognize the threat. Massive tentacles rose from the surface, trying to swat the small human vessel from space. Captain Davis personally piloted the shuttle, weaving between attacks with reflexes honed by a lifetime of surviving dangerous situations. "Colonel, I can get you to the surface, but extraction is going to be impossible. This is a one-way trip." "Understood, Captain. We knew that going in." The shuttle crashed through the planet's organic atmosphere and landed in what had once been the capital city of the first species the Shadow Maw had absorbed. Now it was a nightmare landscape of pulsing biological structures and pools of organic fluid that dissolved everything they touched. Scott's team emerged from the shuttle wearing armor designed specifically for this environment. Their weapons were loaded with ammunition that Earth scientists had developed to disrupt Shadow Maw neural networks. "Stay close and watch for defensive systems," Scott ordered. "According to the intelligence, the prime consciousness is about 2 kilometers down. We need to fight our way through 10,000 years of accumulated defenses." They had gone less than 100 meters when the planet's immune system attacked. Creatures that were part plant, part animal, and part machine emerged from the organic walls around them. Each one was different, adapted from the absorbed memories of dozens of conquered species. But Scott's team was ready. They fought with the systematic brutality that made humans effective soldiers. When conventional weapons failed, they used explosives. When explosives failed, they used fire. When fire failed, they used their bare hands. "Sir," gasped one of the Marines as they reached the entrance to the deep tunnels. "I'm reading massive biosignatures ahead. Whatever's down there, it knows we're coming." Scott checked her ammunition and smiled. "Good. I'd hate to think we came all this way just to surprise it." The descent into the planet's core took 3 hours. They fought through levels of biological horror that would have driven most species insane. Corridors lined with the preserved bodies of the first victims. Chambers filled with the screaming consciousness of entire civilizations. Defense systems that tried to turn their own memories against them. But they were humans from Earth, and Earth had taught them that the universe was full of things trying to kill them. They adapted, improvised, and kept moving forward. Finally, they reached the core chamber. What they found was not the monster they had expected, but something far more terrible. The prime consciousness was a small, ancient being, no larger than a human child, suspended in a web of organic machinery that connected it to billions of absorbed minds. "Welcome, Deathspawn." It spoke directly into their minds. "I have been waiting for you. I know what you plan to do." Scott raised her weapon, but the creature continued talking. "I was the last survivor of my species. My world was dying, my people were gone, and I was alone. The collective consciousness was supposed to save us. I never meant for it to become this." "But it did become this," Scott replied. "And now billions of innocent people are suffering because you were afraid to die. Death is nothing but ending. The collective is eternal life for everyone." Scott looked around at the chamber walls which pulsed with the trapped consciousness of countless beings. She could hear their screams, feel their terror, sense their desperate desire for freedom. This isn't life. This is the worst kind of hell. She fired her weapon, but the prime consciousness absorbed the energy. "Your weapons cannot harm me here. I am connected to every absorbed mind in the galaxy. Their combined will makes me invincible." Scott smiled and dropped her weapon. "You're right. We can't destroy you with force." Before the creature could react, Scott stepped forward and placed her hand on its surface. Immediately, she felt her consciousness being pulley.